Hey coaches, Travis Wyckoff here with the Kingdom Coaching Minute. And I want to talk about best practices today. So we hear that phrase a lot, best practices. We hear it in the coaching profession. We hear it in the business world. I think Jesus gave us best practices, and it's this. He says this: I don't do anything on my own accord. I just do what the Father tells me to do. I say what the Father tells me to say. I engage who the Father tells me to engage. So Jesus' best practices were to stay connected to the Father and do what the Father told him to do. And then in John 15:5, Jesus says this to his disciples: now you abide in me and I in you, and you will bear much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. And so Jesus modeled for us, and then he told the disciples, best practice, abide. Abide in me. And so I think we asked this, what are best practices for recruiting? Well, I think it's abiding in the Lord. What are best practices for player development? What are best practices for marriage? What are best practices for parenting? Oftentimes best practices in our mind is, let's go see what other people are doing. Let's take it and put it into our program or put it into our marriage. And I'm all about learning from other people. But I want to propose this. I think best practices are this: you abiding in Jesus and asking him, Jesus, what do you want me to know, or what do you want me to do about recruiting, about player development, about marriage? What do you want me to know about parenting? What do you want me to know about ministry? What do you want me to know about our strength and conditioning? Like pressing into Jesus and abiding in him and asking him and letting him give you best practices, and not just comparing and stealing and plugging into your program. God's creative. God's really, really creative. And I think he wants us to be creative with him. So we would come into his presence continually, daily, and ask him, Jesus, what are best practices for our program in this situation?